3 that I.
Hi, everybody. This is DM1. We're recording another session with Beth and John. Beth, take it away.
Okay, well, what we're doing, I'm sharing the screen with you now. I hope you're seeing it. And I'm going to modules to take a look at what we have down here in head on
Ed,
down.
we cannot see your screen.
Am I not see?
You're not sharing your screen yet.
Okay, I clicked it, but it's not working. Here we go. Share screen and then share.
Oh, there we go. Now we see it.
There you go.
Yeah.
You have to click two things. You have to say share screen and then share screen again. I keep forgetting about that. So here we are in, you just looked at another project 8 just now. And so we're going on to this project 9, which is about color. So Zach is going to be completely awash in color for the next week. And hopefully the projects you're working on are complementary for sharing with, so I'm going to get in here and open that up. So there we go. So this is about examining primary, tertiary, secondary colors and building up a palette for yourself and then talking about it. So again, it's going to be, this one is going to be delivered in PDFs, though you will be saving all the files as shown up there in the deliverables on the left. Save them all that way and then package your file at the end, and so that it's ideally packaged and zipped, so compressed so that it travels well, and then we can have all of that available to us for when we look at it next week or so. So this is about creating swatches, and it begins with reviewing the 12-part color wheel, which we have over there, and corresponding swatches on the bottom. So when you look at this in color, it's really good. It's not one that we did well with when people printed it out in black and white. So you really have to look at the colors. So we're looking at the tertiary colors created by combining one primary color and one secondary color. So down at the bottom, you can see how that goes when you have yellow and yellow-orange and orange and orange-red. So it goes across the bottom of the screen. Let's see if I need to move this up a little bit so you can see all of those. So you, are you going to edit out all my and ahs?
No.
Done?
No, you're just going to have to speak slowly and clearly.
I'm trying to control trying to control myself. I thought maybe if I did a whole bunch of them in a row that I'd get it out of my system, and the rest of the lecture would be, or explanation would be less ummy. So on the desktop, you're going to be creating your folder, and then you're going to be opening Photoshop. And I haven't done this since last semester, so it's going to be interesting. I do have Photoshop on this computer, so that's good. I have a computer that was taken off the floor of the CTC, so it's like the ones that you guys worked on when you came into the lab. And it has all the same screensavers, so I get that great screensaver with all of the vocabulary practice, the words and the definitions that go across the screen. So we're going to open up Photoshop and create our file and be aware of the width and height that we're going to be choosing. So we're going to be choosing 5 inches. Okay, so I don't have this printed out next to me or anything, so I'm going to be following the directions. I should have done that, but didn't. So it says that we're going to be setting the workspace to essentials, and then locating the swatches palette, showing recent colors, and clicking on Preset Manager. So Preset Manager, down in that one of the versions of this PDF that was so blurry in there, the Preset Manager, that it was unusable. So something happened in the translation, but I think this is the crispest version of this handout. So but if you don't quite get something, sometimes you can get closer like that and zoom in, and so that's another possibility. And with this one, you can't move around too much. I'm going to move us all over here. I've got you in a row up at the top of my screen. So so then you're going to create 3 color swatches you choose from step 1. So when we went to step 1, we created those color swatches. And then at the bottom of the tools palette, click once to set foreground color icon and bring up the color picker dialog box. And you'll be entering your CMYK values. You guys all remember that from the exam? What do they stand for?
Cyan, magenta, yellow, black.
Yes. And why is it K? Does anybody remember why it's K? Last letter in black?
That's what I used to think.
Yeah.
No, it's because it's like the primary color or something, but
well, you'll need that for your color class, right?
oh, I mean, the class isn't based around that. It's an honors English class, but we're focused on art a little bit, so those terms are coming up.
Oh, you have a smidge of art in English?
Visual, actually, it's not. It's a college it's a composition and critical thinking class, so we're kind of analyzing the visual rhetoric of art, and so those terms are coming up briefly.
Good. I'm glad to hear that. More of that. Get those English students. Oh, learning about art. Okay, my little scroll button here is just a little funky, but it's been well used by a lot of Cabrillo. See, I want to smallenize slightly here. Okay, so then you're going to add to your swatches, you give your color a name, and then do the same thing with the 2 remaining colors. Hopefully I'll be able to show this. And how many of you have good Photoshop skills and background? Devin, you've just done this, right? Are you, Devin, have you been working on this one?
I haven't gotten very far.
Okay. Well,
yeah, but I've definitely used Photoshop before, so I at least know what the tools are.
Good. Yeah. Well, I'm not going to put you on the spot.
Yeah, it's not my go-to program, so I'm not an expert at it or anything.
Oh, it's not really mine either. It's more Leslie Reed is really a Photoshop whiz. So if you get a chance to take a class from her, I think DM4 maybe. So I don't know about DM4 next semester. I guess it might be just online, or it might be in a classroom too, but we'll have to look into that. They're starting to set up classes for next semester, so we'll know more about that next week. So part 2 is about pixel painting, and then you create a new layer, which can be fun. I like playing with layers and in Photoshop, just scribbling on each layer and then making a whole stack of layers, and then applying different sorts of I don't know exactly what they call it. I'll find out when I get there. There's a term for all the different ways that you intermix the different layers, and that's really fun. It has nothing to do with retouching photos or anything like that. It's just completely playful. So the pixel painting part is going to be something that you use shape tools and select things and move them around. So it can be pretty fun when you look over to the right and you see that the paintings, they look like kind of like paintings that people have done. You would be doing something like that. So playing around. Then there are also symbols that you can bring into the picture. And I kind of don't like those because everybody's seen them for a couple of decades now. All of those little fleur-de-lis and bunny rabbit and dog bone and fish, those things. I'm kind of all for getting the pen tool and making your own symbols, which you can do in Photoshop because you can bring your Illustrator skills into Photoshop and draw with pen tool, which is the next step there. And I much prefer that really kind of drawing instead of using stock dog paws and trademarks and musical notes and things like that. So if you can you can practice maybe pen tool, which we didn't really do much of. We've manipulated vector-based images, like in Project 7, you may have played around with the outlines of your outlined initials. That's a place where you could have altered the shape of something by playing with the vectors around something. But this would be an opportunity using the pen tool to create some shapes. And I look forward to doing that a little bit later this morning. And then painting with brushes is pretty cool too. So one of the things that happens these days is that there are artists out there who use Photoshop, and they also design brushes. So there's an artist who's designed a whole set of Edvard Munch brushes that make a stroke like you would see in an Edvard Munch painting. So that's pretty cool, and maybe something that we could look up and drag those brushes into Photoshop and see if we can use them. So that's the pixel-based part. So we've got vectors and pixels and colors and the brushes. So using all of those techniques, you're going to create an original 3-color graphic. And that's good advice. Save often as you work. This one doesn't have save every few minutes on every step. So, but it is important to save frequently. And I'm going to now go down to down here. There you go, Beth.
So Beth,
Yeah.
Looks like Zach was asking if you can use Illustrator and transfer it to Photoshop.
That is something let's try it. I haven't really done that much. I think you can copy vectors and then paste them into Photoshop, but I tend to mostly use vectors in Illustrator, but let's try it. That would be a good thing to do today. So I'm going to make a note of it. Let's see, vectors from AI to PS. And maybe in a few minutes I won't know what that means, but then you guys are going to remind me, right? Short-term memory loss. Yeah. Drag. Just happens out there with age. Okay, so then you're going to be setting up a page. You're going to be designing a page, and we'll look at a few of those to see what that involves. We'll look at some examples. And you'll create your final layout in, I think it's InDesign. Yes, we're going to create the layout in InDesign. So there's one example of a layout, and I want to just tuck this screen. I guess if I stop sharing it, John, if I stop sharing this, will this pop back down so that we can look at?
I think try it.
Well, I want to share other things too, so I just really want this screen to be, oh, maybe this here.
Well, you're sharing your whole screen, so you can just
Yeah,
drag it around.
I wanted to put it back into Canvas.
Oh yeah, just I think if you hit escape, it would probably have done that.
Well, no, there's expand and
Oh,
contract
there you go. Okay.
arrows that are up in the upper right. It's a little bit different for every part and every app,
Yeah.
you know, so trying to keep track of all of that's a little crazy making. But we can go to, and getting around in Canvas, there's another thing that I can go to previous, but I don't really want to go to that previous. I really think I have to go back up to modules and come back down to the module again. There should be a quicker way. Should be able to stay in the module, but if anybody knows how to do that. So if I want to stay here, I can stay here and look at the examples, and I'm still sharing. You guys are still seeing this, right? You can all see this, what I'm doing?
Yes.
Here? Okay,
Yes.
cool. Okay, so we're going to be looking at the examples here, and I'm going to be opening this one up. That's the little. So this one uses, you're going to be laying out a page in such a way that you're making it look as nice as you can. And this one has really good alignments. So maybe the edge probably could be just over a smidge. So this is the strongest visual alignment. And so if you're in InDesign, you can drag a guide from out of the ruler and put it next to this column right here. And then you can use that to perfectly align the edge of your graphic there. So that's something to be aware of. So you're going to be placing graphics in InDesign, which we did in Project 7, and that's quite a while ago now, especially with everything that's been going on. So you would be using that method to go into file place and place your graphic in InDesign, and we'll show that part when we get to it, and just kind of in a short version, because we won't be able to do all of this, complete all of
Beth,
these. Yeah.
I see. Did you get the email from Sergio with his project attached? That he
Oh,
just sent?
wonderful.
Yeah,
And-
Sergio just sent his project 7 attached. So you got it in your
Yeah, I
email.
sent it like 20 minutes ago.
Oh, okay. I
Excellent.
just saw it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Good job. So we'll look at P7 and maybe during the break we can get that. Yeah, when's our break? John, are you keeping track of that?
Well, let's see. Anytime you think it's a logical time to take a break, we could do that.
I want to get through these examples, and it might be about time to.
Well, we started the recording at about 11:30. So anytime, but we were doing stuff a
Okay.
little before that. So anytime you want to take a break is a good idea. Why don't you finish up the presentation?
I want to hang out with these examples for a bit,
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
I want them to be all kind of together so you have a clear picture in your mind. So I was just talking about alignment, the vertical alignment, but I noticed something over here that Kimberly did with the sort of another vertical alignment where she found a place in the image. So if you're looking up here at the screen, you can see that she uses alignment here to put her name, which is in small type, her byline. And so that's a really good choice of placement, because it looks more like maybe an article in a magazine, design magazine or something like that, rather than a project for a class. It just feels more like you're looking at a professionally produced article. So she has put the colors down here showing what she's used in the image. And if you were going to be a product designer for some company, you would be consulting a color person who has done lots of work with color and looks at ways to enhance products. And every year, the big committee on color picks the color of the year. And we talked about it earlier in the semester. That's a sort of a deep teal blue this year. So somebody in class was wearing the color, or maybe more than one person was wearing the color. So it'd be a good idea for us to go and take a look at that color again after the break, just to see what the color of the year is and who does those things. So this project could be preparation for thinking about color in terms that have to do with how you would apply it in a professional way to product design for the home, or even machinery, or color swatches that go in a paint store. There are people constantly creating new colors for that. So that would be something that you'd be wanting to think about in terms of maybe a career. But the design of this particular page would be good to have in a portfolio if you were applying for work where you're putting together images and type, either online or in print, for something that where you'd be using this for a graphic design kind of project. Yeah. So you can see there's an opportunity for a lot of different approaches. Let's just see if we can get this up here like that. So the other thing is the writing, being able to talk about what you're doing in terms that are really clear to the reader. And that's another piece. So like Zach, in your English class, you might be working on a publication someplace that has content that has to do with a topic you'd have to research and make interesting to other people. And so this is kind of practice in doing that sort of expository descriptive writing, where you talk about the ideas you had, how the colors came to you, how you decided to put them together in the image, what what influenced you in terms of the way you use the color and how much of each color you use. So those are all things where you could write about what you're doing and have possibly a piece in your portfolio that was about writing and writing on art or on processes. So you never know when some of these projects could come in handy. And you'll notice that down in the type, you have two columns, and the leading is the same across columns, but she wanted to make a space between the type, make a clearly another section, and she used double the leading so that the type that comes out on the second paragraph down continues to align with the type. And if you look at professional magazines that have columns in them, or weekly publications, even like the Good Times, type usually goes all the way across all of the columns on both pages. So if you look at a monthly magazine, that's an accepted form. So you don't break up the horizontal alignment of the rows of type, the lines of type. Then she took a little element to use as her tombstone. So articles in certain magazines have a little symbol at the end of each article, and that little symbol is called a tombstone. And that's like in National Geographic, it is a tiny golden rectangle, which are the proportions of the rectangle, yellow rectangle that's traditionally, or I don't have one handy, traditionally on the cover of the magazine. They're changing things lately, but using something like that to show that it's a closing of the article and it relates to the content visually, that's a really nice touch. So that is something to think about, how you put your page together, how you design your page. Some of you plan to be graphic designers and you want to take note of some of those little details to maybe incorporate them. So this one has a lot more open look to it. I'm going to try to get to the bottom of, there we go. So this is using an interesting combination of typefaces. One's a kind of a typewriter serif typeface, and the other's a traditional serif typeface. And I think that it almost works for me. Normally I would combine a sans serif with a serif body text, but I think that their character, as it were, is different enough so that they're contrasting enough to work, especially when you've got the flowers up there that looks good with the flowers, and so bringing it down to the title and then using it again for the attribution, the name and information down there is good. But I think, and I guess she's using it also for the descriptions, the captions for the type on the side. So it's an interesting combination of pairing of types. So John, what do you think about that pairing? What would you have done for the title? And
I don't know. You know, bloom to me implies some kind of motion or opening. So I might have tried to use the type in a slightly different way. I don't know. I mean, there's lots of ways you can go with it.
I think that
Looks nice.
kind of works.
It works.
It's kind of the type itself. Typeface is fresh. There are things like, however, if you're doing something for a heading like this,
I'd make it bolder, maybe.
You do want to look at your kerning. So this is Bellum rather than Bloom.
I might have made it bold. I don't know.
Yeah. So it might have been bold, but that might have drowned out these two. So I think it gets a good grade for that part.
Yeah, it looks good. It looks nice.
Yeah. So we're not going to necessarily be grading heavily on, see if we have another one here. Heavily on that kind of design. Oh, that's cool. Okay. So this one gets into the, and I like this one because there's a lot of white space around it. It's framed like it's a painting or something, a matted print, art print. So it's got a big, generous white space at the bottom that kind of supports it. Less white space at the top and sort of a medium amount on the sides. And when you go into an art store and you look at all of the mat boards, that's kind of the proportions that they use for the mat boards. So you kind of take a tip from that time-honored sort of proportions that people use with artwork. So this one is, can you tell what's happening in there with the artwork? So when I was talking earlier about combining vector stuff with the Photoshop stuff, and Zach asked if you could bring Illustrator stuff into Photoshop. I think this is probably, the vector work is probably done inside Photoshop in this one. But we'll have to experiment with that. So it looks like these are vector elements that are created in Photoshop, and then they have their little fireflies are I'm not sure how those were done. The Photoshop element of this project was an excellent way of becoming familiar with layers. So maybe she says how she did that, but that would be something to go check out. And so you see how they all have their tertiary colors that they picked, and then they picked one complementary color. So this one also pays attention to alignment. So in class, we've talked about it all the time. If this was a ragged right here on this column, then this would not align with that. But she justified the type so that she has an alignment for aligning her name, which is what we did in project 5, I believe, where you did the color samples and you were required to make your type justified, right justified, so that you could put your name at the bottom and it would align. So she learned from that and brought it forward to this project. So that's, all of those things carry forward. We're building skills and design sense as we go. Again, that nice alignment with these elements, alignment across horizontal with the lines of type. All of that really has worked out well there. So we're paying attention to everything on this one. So I'm going to bring this down, and I think this is time for a break, and then we're going to come back and look at Sergio's project 7 and continue with looking at how to create this project. Do you want to do the demo, John? You can just chime in.
Let me chime in.
I'm going to do my best.
Do you want to take a break before starting this, Beth?
Yeah, I was just saying that we're going to take a break now.
Okay, let's take a break. I'm going to stop the recording. Do you want to go ask for any final questions on what you just covered before we take a break?
Any final questions? Zach, do you have a question?
No.
Okay.
I guess not.
Wait,
okay.
no, hang on. I was muted, and my computer's lagging, so I can't really get to it very fast. What did you say?
I asked if you had any questions about this or anything to add.
Oh, okay. Well, I'm going to stop the recording.
No, I did have a question. Who muted me?
Okay.
I accidentally clicked it again.
Oh, okay.
I was just wondering. God, my computer is so laggy right now. What exactly are we doing after break? I didn't catch that.
Oh, after break, we're going to look at Sergio's project 7, and then we're going to continue to look at the project 9 and try to get into some of the first steps of it. And then I may improvise and just kind of play around to get to the end of it. And I don't have anything prepared in writing, but in InDesign you can do a dummy text just so that I could add some of that. So we should be able to see a fairly realistic process for completing project 9.
Okay.
Okay. So
okay. Well, I'm going to stop the recording and then we'll take a break. So
okay.
let me
You're gonna
stop.